Hey, have you guys heard the news? No. The United Kingdom has just voted to secede from the European Union. Got me thinking though. Do you guys think that American states should be allowed to secede from the United States of America? Hell yeah, they should. Yes! You say yes? What? Are you insane? We tried that 150 years ago, and it didn't work. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled in Texas, yeah, we know the Supreme Court ruled that it's illegal for a state to leave the Union. His question is, should it be allowed? Not is it allowed, but should it be? And the answer is yes. And before you start saying that all Confederate stuff, let me give you a history lesson. This country began succeeding from another country. 13 colonies belonged to the British Empire. And because they were not being treated right, they were being taxed, but they were not a part of the government, no taxation without representation. The Americans had no members in Parliament. We seceded. We broke away and formed our own country. And look how it's turned out. The most powerful, militarily, economically, and socially peaceful country on planet Earth. They call this the American Age. It worked out well. And what did we write in the Declaration of Independence? That when people are being abused, they have the natural right to assume the powers of the earth given to them by their creator to form a government responsible and responsive to their needs. So if a state, just like our forefathers, believes that the federal government is not responding to their needs, why shouldn't they be allowed to leave? In fact, the whole point of democracy is self-determination, that a people should be able to determine their own destiny. So if, let's just say, Texas, if the good people of Texas decide that they would be better off being a separate country than being Americans anymore, why hold them hostage? That just seems undemocratic to me. Let them go, I say. Let them go. Look, I'm not saying that seceding is always wrong in every case, but that's not what he asked us. He said, should American states be able to leave the United States? And the answer is clearly no. And let me explain to you why. One, every single secessionist movement has always been about one thing: money. Even our glorious founding fathers left. Why? Because after fighting the European wars, the British government decided that it was going to tax the American colonies. They figured, hey, our military protects you, our shipping protects you in commerce, we protect you from the Native American tribes, from the Spanish, we just fought a war to protect you from the French. Why shouldn't you pay your fair share of the cost of empire? And the American colonists said, no, we'd rather keep the money for ourselves. Look at the Civil War. Why did the Confederates leave? Because they were going to be deprived of their property. Negroes. They viewed them as commerce, a way to generate income. You look at New York City wanting to secede to keep its money. Upstate wanted to secede from New York to keep its money. Cut California in half to keep its money. All movements, even this Brexit thing in England, is about what? Well, Brussels is taking our money. It's always about money. So let's not make some kind of illustrious argument that it's about peace and love and liberty and democracy. It's about cold hard cash, my friend. That's one. And two, all secession movements are hypocritical. Take the case of Quebec. The Quebecois claim that they have the right to leave Canada. Well, the Inuit people who live in Quebec are like, we don't want to leave Canada. So if you leave Canada, we'll break off and leave you. And the Quebecois say, well, no, you can't do that. Well, why not? See, every secessionist movement, like let's say this is a country, they say we could break off. But then when a peace wants to break off for them, they go, no, you can't. The whole must be contained. You can't do that. Once you go down the road that people could secede, you can't put brakes on it. If Texas can leave the United States, well then South Texas can leave Texas. And then San Antonio could leave them. And then Houston could leave them. Heck, one man in his house, sitting in his pool, drinking a Budweiser could say, you know what? I don't want to pay any taxes. So I'll just secede me and my house. You end up with like fragmentary countries all over the place. It makes no sense. Democracy is not always about getting your way. Democracy is about the will of the people. People being plural. Which means if you don't get your way, you don't get to pick up your ball and go home. You could protest. You could vote. You could run for office yourself to try to change people's opinions to get it your way. But you don't get to just break off a piece and leave. You're miscategorizing my argument. No way do I endorse just wholesale fragmentation. Before our founding fathers seceded from the British Empire, they wrote the Declaration of Independence, which was a list of grievances which could be judged on their merit. Before the Confederates broke away from the United States, they also listed a list of grievances which could be judged on their merit, which was found wanting. Wanting to own other people is not a valid reason for breaking away. I'm not saying you just wake up one day and leave. Look what happened in the United Kingdom, for instance. The issue was put before the people. Both sides had a chance to say what they wished, and then they voted to leave. And they have their reasons. And the EU Charter, by the way, permits it. The Canadian Constitution, if the Québécois leave, permits it. So why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we at least open the debate? If a state has a reasonable reason for wanting to leave, why shouldn't they be allowed to go? Why shouldn't they be allowed if they say what's happening in this country is so egregious, we don't want to be a part of it anymore? I don't think that's unreasonable. In our Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution, we list those values that we find to be the most important. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to counsel, the right not to be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law, and so on. So it's not as if, say, Texas is going to leave saying, hey, we should get to leave because you're not letting us to practice our religion. You're getting that. We want to leave because we're not being allowed to speak our mind. You're getting that. So yes, I understand your argument, what if they're being egregiously offended? But that's not going to happen because we have a constitution which prevents that from happening. And like I said, almost every secessionist movement is not about these lofty ideals. It's about money. Not one end, it's always about, well, I have a lot and I don't want to share it with my neighbor. It's greed. Naked, ugly greed. I have something and rather than share it with my neighbor, I don't want to do it. Or, in the case of the Civil War, it's greed mingled with hate and racism. I like to keep my Negroes. I like them working in the fields where I can beat them. So come on, I don't want to hear this thing. Like I said, there can be reasons why a state want to succeed. And the Supreme Court decision, which you wouldn't let me cite, says that. If Texas wants to leave, it only has to get the permission of the other 49 states. Then it can go. Seems fair. Get the permission of the other 49 states. There's 300 million Americans. We don't agree on anything. So, how can you get the permission of 49 of the states? I don't think it should be that high. I think if 60% of your state and a majority of the other states agree that you should be allowed to go, then you should be allowed to go. Think of it as a divorce. Can a man hang on to his wife against her will? Say, nope, we're married. She's stuck with me forever. She can't get out. I own her. Like a piece of property. Like a chair. Or a desk. No. If she decides that this union is no longer to her benefit, she's allowed to go. Goodbye. Goodbye. I don't see why the same thing shouldn't happen with our states. The problem is that as 50 states, our funds are commingled. The highways, the bridges, the military weapons, the bases, all the improvements in Texas that was paid by the federal government is money from all 50 states. The debt of our federal government was run up by all 50 states. It's unfair for Texas to say, you know what, we're going to leave, but we're going to take all the possessions that happen to be in our land, even though the other 49 states paid for them. But we're not going to take any debt with us, even though as one of the 50 states, we helped run it up. And that's why I say succession movements are always hypocrisy. They want to take and leave the stuff that's beneficial to them, but leave behind the things that aren't beneficial to them. Yes, we get to take the land and stuff, but not the debt. We get to do this, we get to do that. That's not the way it works. That's unfair. But that's what succession movements are always about. They're always about the worst impulse of human beings, selfishness. And I don't think selfishness should be codified in the Constitution. We have a representative government. If you have issues with our government, you have your remedies. Protest. Speak to other people to get them to change their opinions. Vote. Young people, vote. Young people, vote. Did I mention that young people should vote? Old people vote. Why young people vote? Oh, that's another issue. You can vote. Write papers. Put a bag over your head and talk about the issues. That is the way you get change. Not pick up your ball and go home. And you cannot liken a country to a marriage. A marriage is two individuals. A country is 300 million people who exist now, and the hundreds of millions of Americans who will exist into the future. So no, the state of Texas, even though it is big, it's just a handful of those people. They cannot unilaterally make a decision that will affect all of us. Well, what do you think? I don't know. Well, what do you guys think? Why don't you leave your comments down below and you tell us what you think. Should states be allowed to secede from the Union? Or, as the Supreme Court says, is the United States an indissoluble union and a state can only get out through the consent of the other 49? Thanks for listening to another Bad Man Debate.